I'm seeing life from my perspective now as weeks. So of course, I'm thinking about that. I got a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful kids. I got a beautiful great-grandchildren. People ask me, why do you think God would have done this to you? And so there's this very bittersweet moment, and when I get up and say what I just said now kind of thing, of, he's been so good to me. I know my kids have got to work through that. They gotta, oh yeah, but where do we put that?
It's really good to see you, Ken. We had dreamed of having you with us in person, but obviously, for health reasons, that has not been possible. It's good to see your face again. You've been a blessing to our church many times.
Yeah.
But you brought a lot of life to us. We're going to be watching an interview you did with Larry in Regina, and you're going to be telling a little bit your story. And the reason we are talking to you is because you really insisted on making this connection, and so we didn't really want to bug you too much, but we love you, and we want you to be able to say hi to Smythe Street Church.
Thank you very much for the privilege. So hello, Smythe Street Church. I can say this now. You're one of my favorite churches across the country, and that's I did not bully my way in, but I was like, no, I need to say hi to your people, and so you guys, I always knew you're there in the background. Always knew. I think you guys always knew I was there for you, and it was a beautiful synergy. And I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your lives. You helped out, your church helped out a lot when I was driving back and forth, or not driving, flying back and forth from Victoria to Fredericton. And see, I even say it right.
Yeah.
To Fredericton. So, yeah, so.
Well, you're a maritimer now, man.
That's got her down, man. He says Fredericton. So, yeah, Linda and I have said that all the moves we made, and we shut it down trying to figure out, I think it was at 36 moves we made in our lifetime.
36.
Yeah.
That is, and back and forth in different parts of Canada too.
Yeah, I gotta say that after all those moves, all those driver's licenses, all those provinces, that the Maritimes was our favorite.
Wow, thank you, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously a close second would be BC, but I was born in BC, so to get acknowledged, and me end up saying, yeah, this is it is my favorite province. BC's behind it.
Oh wow, that's you've never told me that before. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, we're gonna watch now your interview with Larry Moore in Regina, and you're going to be telling a little bit your story, where you're at, and what God is doing in your life, and also you're gonna be telling us a little bit how you're facing this health crisis in your life.
Right.
So I want to say thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. God bless you, Ken.
God bless you, buddy.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, bye for now.
Ken Parker is a friend, and we have ministered together, not a lot, but some. Just have a great appreciation for him and his wife, Linda. They asked to come and to share here with us, and I was more than happy to give him that opportunity. So just to preface everything that's going to happen this morning, I'm just going to ask Ken to give us the basics of how you got to where you are right now.
Okay, well, where I am right now, and then I'll back up the train. Where I am right now is I have stage 4 metastasized liver cancer. I found out on June 29th. And oncologist said you have about a year to live. And so I'm into that now, and I'm affected by weakness, some pain. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. The story behind how I got here was last September, Linda and I bought e-bikes. My kids laughed, said, "Dad, you're a biker, man. You can't ride an e-bike. You're going to fall off." So anyway, Linda and I were on vacation, and sure enough, I went over the handlebars. That's a funny story in itself. And we still had 10 days of vacation left. Linda was bugging me to go to the emergency ward, and I said, "There's no way I'm spending 1 second of my vacation in an emergency ward waiting room." So anyway, 10 days go by, I end up home. She's still bugging me to go. I'm saying, well, they're just going to tell me my ribs are busted and go home and heal. So anyway, but she kept like, "No, you got to go." So I went. They did x-rays. Sure enough, I broke the 4 bottom ribs, 2 on each side. And then the ER doc looks at me and she said, "And sometimes we find stuff we're not looking for." She said, "You have a little growth on your liver." She said, "Don't be alarmed. It could just be a parasite, but you got to look after this. You got to go get it checked." So middle of October, I had the MRIs and whatever. And as they compared the two, the tumor had already grown. So I got referred to a surgeon. I had surgery on February 12th or 10th. They took out 40% of my liver. The surgeon came in a couple of days later and said, "I got it all. I'm not even sure you need chemo." So 3 months went by, middle of June, before the cancer clinic called me with an appointment with the oncologist. And I get in, the oncologist is quite upset. She says, "Why did it take so long for you to get to me?" And I said, one of my medical caregivers thought the other one was referring, and the other one thought the other one was referring, and so I didn't get referred. And she looks at me. I said, "But I'm glad I'm here now because to find out if I'm going to have chemo." And she looks at me and says, "I could have told you before the surgery you would have chemo, and it would have started 2 weeks after your surgery." And she said, "It would have been very aggressive IV chemo." She said, "The kind of cancer you have is very, very aggressive." And she said, "It gets into your bile ducts, you're done." So of the liver. So anyway, she put me on 2 weeks of oral chemo and also did CT scans, echocardiograms, all kinds of stuff. 2 weeks later, I go in to see her. She walks in the door. She says, "Ken, I'm really sorry. I have very bad news for you." And told me what I told you and said I have about a year to live. That was on June 29th. So that's what brings me to here. And yeah, so.
Ken is a friend of this house. How many have listened to Ken preach before? Yeah, many of you have.
Yeah.
Good friend of Pastor Rick's, previous pastor here. So he's been here many times. Wherever Ken goes, whether it's in Canada or overseas, whenever he ministers, he always ministers in the gifts of the Spirit. One of those gifts happens to be physical healing. And he could tell you many stories of people that were healed and miraculous healings, and any healing is miraculous. But yeah, he would tell you many of those, which brings him to today, standing in need of healing himself. And so the conundrum, if you will, I'm not sure that maybe you've been there before, maybe you haven't, doesn't matter. The conundrum is this, that after God did everything that he did through Ken in obedience, now he sits here in front of you saying that he has a year to live, probably less than a year at this point, 3/4 of a year, if the Lord doesn't intervene. We had lunch with him yesterday, him and Linda, and my wife and I, Sandra. And I looked at him after lunch, a little bit after lunch, and I said, Ken, I don't know what to do with you. Because he's not crawling into a hole and wrapping himself in some type of emotional cocoon. He's actually on purpose asking if he can come and talk about this Jesus, listen to me, who hasn't healed him yet. Okay? And part of our conversation in answer to my question had to do with something he classified as the character of God. So I'd like him to, in the first service he did this, I'd like him to speak to that piece.
It's my delight to do that. I have found over the years that Pentecostal charismatics are some of the worst at not being able to accept the will of God. Because we live with issues of entitlement. And, you know, because we have the promises we do. Let me just start out by saying, my theology has not changed on healing. I'm believing God for healing today. I mean, they prayed for me in the last service. And you know what? And I'm waiting for the pain to go away. I'm waiting for a physical manifestation that says, no, that you're being healed. So I haven't changed a bit on that. Not a tiny little bit. And at the same time, on June 29th, when I got the news, Linda was in Dryden. I was supposed to be joining her a few days later. So I had a couple of days to try to process stuff on my own and try and figure it out. And I think, well, I'll come to that in a minute. But one of the things that, I'll say it right now. I think healing is complicated. And I think we need to hear from Jesus, not our 5 steps prayer for healing. I'm not saying that it can't be helpful, but we need to hear from Jesus. We got to hear Jesus. What are you saying? I've had all kinds, too many, to be honest, people come up to me with their opinions, to the point that I said, if this is your opinion, keep it to yourself. If you got the word of the Lord, I want to hear it, but I'm tired of opinions. I need to hear from Jesus. So when I had a couple days, yeah, go ahead. This is all about Jesus. It really is all about Jesus. So as I said, Lord, what posture do you want me to take in this? What do you want me to do? And he said, those who know me well, I get called the warrior all the time. I'm the guy who pushes through everything, all kinds of stuff we faced, Linda and I have faced. We had more than our fair share of trials, more than our fair share of sickness and whatever. But I always push through it. And so I said, Lord, what posture do you want me to take? He said, I don't want you to war in this one. I want you to rest, and I want you to be in receiving mode. Let your friends do the warring. And you just be, so, there's barely a day goes by. I'm sure I missed one somewhere, but barely a day goes by where I'm not saying, Lord, I'm wide open for your healing. I receive. I garner all the prayers that are being prayed all over the world. And Lord Jesus, laser it on me right now, and I believe you for healing. That's the extent of my warring. That's all I'm doing. It's more of a receiving thing. So, and the other thing he said to me was, Ken, there's nothing you could say or do that would hinder my healing. Do you know when you read through the Gospels, Jesus put way more emphasis on the faith of the person praying than the faith of the person that was the victim or sick. He puts the faith, he says, no, it's up to the person praying. So that's what I'm resting in. I'm just going, okay, God. One of the things that I noted as people have talked to me about my situation, as I considered over 40, I think it's 45 years of ministry, I've seen this over and over again. God is only as big as the bigness of our blessing. I don't believe that, but I'm talking about amongst Christians. He's only as big as the bigness of our blessing. So if he's blessing us, we're like, oh, rah, rah, rah. But if all of a sudden everything goes sideways, we put God on trial and find him guilty. We ask why questions that are none of our business. Because he's sovereign. He's Lord. In Job, In the last service, I read through read through all the calamities. It took too long, so I'm not going to read through it all this time. But leave it to say he had just about lost everything except for his health. And people were coming to him. If you start up in, I'll just tell you what verse. I'm in Job chapter 1. In verse 13, that's when he starts to get news of all these calamities. And then, which was very severe, lost kids, lost cattle, lost houses, lost everything, basically. Lost servants. It says, verse 20 then, it says, then Job got up and tore his human emotion, but faith helps us embrace human emotion. It says, then Job got up, tore his robe, he shaved his head, then he threw himself down with his face to the ground, and he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return there. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. May the name of the Lord be blessed. And it's one thing to bless God when he's blessing you. It's another thing to bless God when you haven't got the foggiest notion of what's going on, why it's going on. It's like he didn't ask why questions. He didn't rail at God. He just said, the name of the Lord be blessed. And you know what? I think it stands on, and I'm not going to turn to it, but I'm going to use another scripture from Job. Job at the end, now his health is gone, now everything's gone. At one point he says, Lord, even if you kill me, I'll still trust you. And I see two types of faith in there. One is a situational faith, and Job's was in the toilet. Like, he's going, even if you kill me. Like, I think he's looking over his shoulder. He had faced so much. He's looking over his shoulder, doesn't know what's coming next. And he says, God, even if you kill me. Now, us charismatic Pentecostal will be quick to try to get him to change his speech on that. Even if you kill me, God, I'll still trust you. The first was a situational faith. The second was an abiding faith. I will trust you even when I don't have a clue what on earth you're doing to me or why. And I call that abiding faith. And I think that comes from his understanding of the character of God, the goodness of God, the faithfulness of God, the love of God, the care of God, all good things that you could say about God's character, his sovereignty, his omniscience, his omnipresence, all that kind of stuff, all shapes the character of God. And I think Job had such a great handle on that his trust in God was massive, even if you kill me, God. And I think that Christians, North American Christians in particular, because we've grown up with entitlement issues and security issues, everything that we want, everything we think we should have, and life should just be good and all that kind of stuff. I think that we are sorely lacking in our understanding of and application of the character of God. And I realized, I was thinking, well, I always thought, why do people ask why questions? Why do people put God on trial and find him guilty? And I was pondering it in light of all this stuff, and I realized, young in my Christian experience, I don't know how I got it. Honestly, I can't point to a situation. Usually I can when I'm got a conviction about something. I got a story about an encounter I had with God that developed. I don't have that for the character of God. But somewhere young in my Christian experience, I must have, or I did decide that I would always trust the character of God. And I always have. My situational faith has sometimes been where Job's was. But I always trusted God. You know, that's what's made me those of you that know the story of stuff that Linda and I have done, that's what's made me almost fearless to a flaw, is I figure if I screw up, Jesus can fix it. If I let's move from New Brunswick to Surrey. That just happened last year. I was supposed to be in Surrey at least 5 years. I get this announcement almost diagnosis all 1 week past when we moved there, like a year later. It was a full year and 1 week. I'm going, what on earth? But because of the character of God, we've risked. I'm talking about Linda and I want to say that we've risked. We have sacrificed. We have thrown it all at the Lord, like our finances, everything. We've sold houses and lived off the equity to plant churches. We've done all kinds of stuff. But it come out of this deep understanding of the character of God, and he is faithful. The other thing that was this was a revelation to me, and I can point to it. I won't tell the story right now, but when I had the revelation of the father heart of God to me, that he was my father. Some of you know my story. I was raised in a home where I left home at 15 and lived on the streets. There had been 8 men in and out of my house in that time. 3 of them my mom married. And here I am. I can show you, even in those years, God knew what was going on, and he was faithful, and he was preparing my life. The faithfulness of God, the father heart of God, the security to know, Jesus, God's ways are not my ways. I don't know why this is happening the way it is right now, but I'm not even concerned about it. I've never asked why. I don't ask those questions. Because too many times he said to me, it's none of your business. I'm serious. He says, no, let me throw this on here. A person who is very close to me and very dear, he doesn't know the Lord yet. Him and I do all kinds of stuff together. I don't want to say more because I know it's being broadcast. So I don't want to kind of, if he ever decides to listen, I could be in trouble. But he sat with me about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and he said to me, I've shared the gospel with him. He's traveled with me on mission stuff. He looked at me and he said, the way you're going through this right now, he said, you're making me rethink my position on Jesus. When we talk about God's ways aren't our ways. And you say, well, why would God do this to Ken? Like, where's the healing or whatever? I got people like Mark Vahi and Rick Parkin and some of those ones, that that crew, we all kind of walked in the same circle. Mark talked to me 2 hours last night, built my soul. I was just elated. But now I lost my train of thought. I shouldn't have said anything about Mark. Oh, yeah, my friend. You know what? If Jesus would have come to me and said, Ken, I'm gonna bring your dear friend to me. But there's a catch. You have to die for him to come to me. Now, if Jesus had chose to involve me in that process, I would have said, take my life, Lord. If he said to me, it's up to you, I would have said, take my life. Because I have no idea what he's up to. So I have chosen to say, because I can rest in the character of God, I'm full of joy, I'm full of peace. I got assignments going on. The others where I was invited. Here, I wanted to come. And the other 2 places I was invited are places where I have significant relationship, like with you guys. And I want everybody to know I'm alive. I'm not well, but I'm alive. My spirit is great. My soul is great. My body, not so much. And I got people saying to me, do you think you can actually do this? Do you think you can, do these assignments here, New Brunswick, BC? Yesterday, I had to use a wheelchair. Boy, did I have to swallow my pride to do that in the airport. I didn't have the strength to walk. So I say to them when they ask, do you think you can do this? I go, I'm going to think I can until I can't. When I can't, I'll stop. But I'm going to think I can until I can't. And I don't know what the timeline looks like when I can't. But my point is, I'm still drawing breath. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm not upset over anything. Jesus got my life in his hands. Oh, by the way, let me throw this in. The oncologist actually looked at me and she said, I think you are in the condition you are now because the system failed you. And the oncologist said that. And I almost felt like she was hinting at, you got a lawsuit here. And I went out after that appointment. I was actually really mad. I imagine most of you would have been too. I was really mad. But then when I filter it through the character of God, I go, you know what? No flawed medical system, no incompetency numbers my days. Jesus does. He numbers our days. And you know what? It's appointed unto man once to die. After this, the judgment. There's not a person in this room, unless Jesus comes back right now. There's not a person in this room that gets an option of taking the off-ramp that's a dead end. You can't scream by that. When it's your turn for the off-ramp, you got to get on it. Who knows what the ride will be? But I think we can do it as believers with dignity and grace and work as long as I can work and do whatever I can do. And I think we need to get past this whole thing about God owes me something. He doesn't owe me anything. He owes me nothing. I'm the kid who was grade 10 education, saved off the street. Man, I've lived a really rich, full life. I've traveled all kinds of places in the world. I've had national and international influence. I have a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful children, sons-in-law. I got three beautiful grandchildren, beautiful great-grandbaby. Jesus doesn't owe me anything. So when I'm going through this, I don't go through it, well, Lord, I don't think this is fair. Life isn't fair. And we're, as believers, supposed to portray life as a believer going through trials so that others look and go, what do you got how can you do that? And I'm getting that all the time in this situation.
Yeah, that's a good segue. Your friend that you mentioned, I remember you talking to me about him going on a missions trip with you and seeing a number of healings, a number of supernatural moves of God, if you will. You didn't say exactly what they were, but healings were part of it. Mm-hmm. And when he came back, he still wasn't willing and interested at that point to say yes to Jesus. But when you got sick and he watched how you walked through that in faith, mm-hmm. he said that at that point that he was reconsidering his stance with this God that you speak of.
And you know what's really interesting? Is it okay if I back up and tell the story a little more? Obviously, he could end up just being, when he's a believer and he's listening to Regina app sermons.
There's millions of them out there, so he may be listening.
Yeah, there you go. So, where I took him was, well, I got to tell you, we were in the Amazon basin working with river people. And we were out for 2 weeks. And Matt saw all kinds of miracles, words of knowledge, prophetic stuff. He saw it. And that's actually one of the reasons he asked me if he could come with me. Well, now I said his name even. Sorry, buddy. So, anyway, we get to the end of that tour. And we're in the missionary's house the last night we were going to be there. And the missionary, the lady, she says, looks at Matt, everybody loved him, looks at him and says, so now you've been out for a couple of weeks and you saw the stuff you saw and you've heard the things you've heard. She said, I'm just curious, what's your position on the Lord right now? And he said, well, I figured something out. He said, I believe in God, but I don't like him. And he said, and I don't believe in him like you guys do. So they pressed him a little bit and said, what do you mean you don't like him? Like, why don't you like God? So we have family that there was a great tragedy and the husband died. 17-year-old daughter comes home from school, finds him dead on the floor. Matt knows this whole story, and Matt is this super level guy. He's just the nicest guy you could ever meet. And he all of a sudden got animated. He leans forward, and we're at the dinner table. He leans forward and he goes, "So what kind of God would do that? Kill a guy and then have his daughter come home and find him dead on the floor. What kind of God is that?" And then he looks across the table at me and he says, "And then there's you, and we are very, very, very close." And he goes, "And then there's you." He said, "I listened to that this last couple of weeks. What do you guys call that, word of knowledge or something?" He said, "And I saw people get healed." And he said, "You call out all kinds of stuff." And he then had listed off all my sicknesses and ailments. And then he goes, "I was waiting on it. Why don't you call yourself out?" So the miracles weren't enough. And you know what? He wanted to go with me on another trip. That's probably not going to happen now because I'm probably not going on another one. But he wanted to go with me on another one. I said to him, actually, I was very frank. I said, "Matt, you wanted to go see miracles and signs and wonders, and you saw those." And I said, "That didn't convince you because you got a bigger issue. Your bigger issue is you don't understand the character of God." And I said, "If you come with me on another one, I'm not worried. It's not going to be about to show you more miracles because you don't need to see more. You saw enough." I said, "But I'm going to help you work on knowing who God really is, who Jesus really is. Because this is all about Jesus. I would not be here if it wasn't because other than Jesus. It's because he's the one that, in my weakness, he's made strong. And by his grace, I can accomplish whatever he wants me to accomplish. So by faith, I'm going to do that. And by faith, I'm going to walk this out with as much. And by faith, I'm going to believe God every day for healing at the same time.
Amen. Amen. So I don't know whether the sickness has given you amnesia or not, but this is a Pentecostal church. We practice Pentecostal gifts of the Spirit, et cetera, we believe in healing. And we live under the new covenant, if you will. And because we live under the new covenant, this is not supposed to be happening.
Right.
So because of that, I don't know what your problem is, but
be healed.
It's either a lack of faith on your part or mine.
Probably yours.
Probably.
I'm teasing.
If you don't mind, I'd like to do the interview.
Yeah. No, this is more fun.
It's either a lack of faith on your part or the person praying for you, or there's sin in your life.
Yeah.
Now, I'm being facetious here.
But that's what we hear.
I'm touching on something that's very sensitive because numbers of people that we've prayed for, numbers of people that you prayed for didn't get healed. Whose fault is that? Obviously, you're saying that that's not necessarily anybody's fault. We have to trust in the character of God. Mm-hmm. You have 5 minutes to unpack that.
Okay. So we talked the character of God already. So let's move into this whole thing of healing. Like I said to you. Oh, by the way, are there any people that were born and raised in the East here? Like, I'm not talking Toronto. I'm talking like East Coast. And anybody? Sandra, I want you to notice I have my lobster socks on. Just saying. That was random. What was the question?
Only a guy that has a year to live would want to point out his lobster socks.
Well, I think they're awesome. I have beer and pizza ones too, but I thought you might not like that. Oh, I can't believe that came out. Socks.
So
I got the question. I was teasing him. I got it. So let's talk about this healing thing for a minute. First of all, how Larry introduced me is true, and most would introduce me in similar ways. I've seen a lot of healing. I've seen lots of stuff. But you know, at one point, a few years ago, I was just not scientifically, but on my own, I was trying to calculate what percentage of people that I pray for get healed. And at its zenith, the highest I got, and again, this is straw stuff, it's not scientific, it was about 25%. 25% of the people I prayed for got healed. Well, that's fantastic. You know, we could clap over that and say, well, that's really great. But on the flip side, that means 75% of the people I prayed for, 3 out of 4 people didn't get healed. And Mike, as I've researched it and studied, and I'm still in learning mode regarding it all, my conclusion is it's not going to be by our 5-point, you do this first, then you ask them this, then you do this, then you do that. We got to hear from Jesus. We have, because healing is complicated. And how come God will take one person that's not a believer and heal them, and take a guy like me, because you see, you're not entitled, Ken, because you served me, all these years. It's complicated. I was in Cuba one time with Rick, and him. I had preached, and him and I had an understanding that whoever preached looked after the altar ministry. Well, Cuba at that time, I've got a little bit of Spanish in me, so Cuba at the time, still is actually, was in a healing revival. Massive healing revival. And those guys over there got huge faith for healing. Like, and every time, there's people healed all the time. And so anyway, I preached this message, and we got down to praying for people. And typical of Latin people, the worship after I did an altar call, there was probably 500 people at the altar. And the worship was through the roof. You can't hear yourself even think. And it was beautiful, but loud, really loud. And so Rick was working one end of the altar. I was working the other end. The place was packed. And this lady, I have to use a translator. So this lady was standing there, and I looked at her. I said, "What do you need?" She says, "I have through the translator, I have a herniated disc," and told me her symptoms and whatever and what they're saying they need to do. I said, "I got exactly the same thing." And above the music, the loudness of the music, I said, "Let's pray." And I went to put my hand on the back of her neck. I didn't even get my hand there. It was about this far off. And above the volume of the music and whatever, I heard her neck crack. I haven't said a word yet, not even touched her. And I heard it crack. And I looked at the interpreter. "Did you hear that?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "What happened to you?" She said, "Well, all of a sudden, everything," she said, "I think it's in line." I said, "Can you do anything or whatever?" And so she started doing stuff, and it was obvious she got healed on the spot. So I stopped the music and everything, and I told the whole conference, this is what just happened here. In the meantime, Rick had walked over to me, and he looks at everybody. The place charged with faith for healing. Guys who've seen way more healing than me, and I'm the guy talking to them about healing. And Rick comes over and he says, "Well, this is Kenn's night for healing." And I'm like, here we go. One of the men that I would trust the most, Pastor Rick, and here I am in Cuba amongst my dear friends with lots of faith here. This is it. I'm getting healed right now. I know I'm getting healed. So they start praying, and man, did they pray. And I'm waiting there because I was in constant pain. And after the meeting, I had to go take a pain pill. It's complicated. You say, "Oh, this is exactly what we need." So let's start with that it's complicated. I think none of us should stop praying for healing, because Jesus said, he didn't tell us to pray for the sick. He said, heal the sick. And so we're not off the hook because there's only 25% rate of return for me. It lowered after that, by the way, to be very frank. And I was trying to figure that out. What's going on? It's complicated. And we, in our infinite human minds, do not have a clue what God's up to. So all we do is obey him. What's he saying? What am I supposed to pray if I'm praying for somebody else? If I'm the sick one like me right now, that's why I went to him right away. What do you want me to do in this? What's my posture? And he said the things he said to me. I'm walking in that. I got people coming up to me and saying, you lack faith. You shouldn't be talking like that. You're speaking death over yourself. You're not speaking life. And I go, I'm speaking what I believe. I'm doing what I believe Jesus told me to do. So that was 5 minutes, I think.
I think your sickness is affecting your sense of time.
You be careful. It could be my sense of humor, too. I'm reining in the filters right now.
Have the worship team come if they would.
You guys, you know, something that was very important for me, to come to places where they knew me, like you guys, as a church, you know me, is to say, I'm alive. I'm not well, but I'm alive. I'm full of joy. I'm full of peace. You know, do I like this? No, I don't. Sucks. But Jesus knows what he's doing.
So, Ken, just take a quick look around. This crowd is different than the first crowd. If the Lord doesn't heal you, this could be the last time you see these people. Mm-hmm. What do you want to say to them?
Develop in your relationship with Jesus, because it's all about Jesus. Don't let church culture, religious culture, personal preferences, whatever, don't let it distract you from pursuing Jesus. If I've accomplished anything in my life, it's because by the grace of God, I have a very deep and intimate relationship with Jesus. That's the only thing. Hearing from him. I said in the last meeting, you know, this intimacy with Jesus is not just for special people, you know, sitting on a platform or whatever. It's for all of us. And I know many, many Christians that have traded intimacy with Jesus for church culture, which I call the Christian ghetto. They've traded intimacy with Jesus for being accepted by a group of people for whatever reasons. And you're getting robbed. You're being robbed if you're in that place. This is all about Jesus, and it's all about his mission. I would ask you to trade information-based learning, you know, where we sat in classes and whatever and learned. I would ask you to trade information-based learning for obedience-based learning. For what does it profit a man? What does it profit a man when he has looked at the word and he goes away and he doesn't do it and he goes away, he can't even remember what he looks like? I know I got it all wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, what does it profit? And I would say, make a choice and a decision to say, I am going to be an obedience-based disciple of Jesus. It doesn't matter to me how much you know. Honestly, it doesn't. It's not about the knowledge. I think knowledge is good and we should get it. But this is not about the knowledge. This is about Jesus. This is about being on mission with him, listening to him, obeying him. Choose to say, I believe in you, Lord, enough that I no longer have a choice. Whatever your will is, that's what I'll do. But that can only come out of intimacy with Jesus and understanding of his character. And I would quote the Apostle Paul when he said, I beg you, therefore, brethren, that by the mercies of God, you would present your bodies as a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable worship. If we could unleash an army of people who say, no, I present my body, everything I mean, and I don't mean half-hearted, I mean like full on, because he's going to ask you to do stuff that you argue with him for a few months before, but give in and say yes. and let the will of God, if we could unleash an army of people who are listening to Jesus and saying yes when he wants us to say yes and no when he wants us to say no, we'll turn Regina upside down. I always knew you were there in the background. I think you guys always knew I was there for you. And, it was a beautiful synergy. And I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your lives. Bye for now.